What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got a little bit of a late video for you guys. Thursday Night Football is actually going on in the background as I'm filming this video, but I've got some lineup advice for you guys regarding Week 5 NFL action. I wanted to get you guys some of my top sits. Guys, I don't want you putting in your lineups this week. They're going to hurt you guys and lose your weeks. And my must-start players who I think are really going to have great outings and are going to get those wins picked out for you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to get into things here. But if you guys have any questions that I don't cover in this video, make sure to comment them down below. If you've got situations, who you think you should start or sit, and you want me to give my input for you guys' lineups, put that in the comment section down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you guys and help you with your lineups this week. Starting out with my sit list for the week, make sure you sit all of your Philadelphia Eagles, Carson Wentz, Zach Ertz, and Miles Sanders included. I know the wide receiver core is absolutely decimated right now, but they have a brutal matchup against the Steelers this week. And the Steelers are coming off a bye, and good teams coming off a bye week play exceptional, especially when they're well coached, and the Steelers aren't going to make lax mistakes on defense this week. The Steelers had that bye week, of course, because the Titans are dealing with that coronavirus outbreak on their team. And the NFL didn't want them to play a game, and obviously rightly so, because the cases are still popping up in that organization, and we didn't want to shut down more than one team. So I think that game against the Bills for the Titans this week is actually in jeopardy, but I'll get to that in a little bit later. But right now, the Steelers are primed to absolutely shut down a struggling Philadelphia offense that somehow produced against the 49ers, which is a very impressive task and feat, but I think that the Steelers might be too much to handle here. The Steelers are more healthy on defense. The Steelers, I believe, are well rested. I think that they're going to bring it to the Eagles. Listen to these stats here. In the 3 games the Steelers have played so far this season, they allowed 6 rushing yards to Saquon Barkley. They allowed 23 yards to David Johnson, and their highest rushing outing of the season is 70 yards to Melvin Gordon. For you standard players out there, that's 7 fantasy points. I know he had some receptions. He ended up getting a reception touchdown, which saved his week. But otherwise, we're looking at brutal fantasy outings for running backs against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The Steelers have only allowed a mere 162 yards rushing through 3 games, and that shows the absolute elite front that they have and the speed that they have to make the tackles and contain running backs out of the backfield. I watched the opening Monday Night Football game, Giants versus Steelers, and Bud Dupree and TJ Watt were flying off the edges. Devin Bush was jamming up the middle. They were tackling Saquon Barkley for massive losses, like 4 or 5 yard losses, all the way back in the backfield. It was absurd. If you have to start Miles Sanders this week, I understand it's hard to find RB depth, but if you have anyone competent in your bench who can fill that role, please start them, especially if we're talking like James Robinson or guys here who don't have big names but have had great fantasy seasons so far. Miles Sanders needs a touchdown or an explosive catch to really save his fantasy week, and that's not the most likely thing in the world to happen against an overall solid defense from top to bottom. Obviously, at the end of the day, the choice is yours. I know that the decision is tough to sit a running back as talented as Miles Sanders is, but trust me, if you have another option, it will pay off this week. Also, Zach Ertz, I'm full on getting extremely nervous. Ertz, obviously, is probably going to be covered by Mike Hilton, who's a very solid slot corner for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or Devin Bush is going to be carrying the responsibilities out as an inside linebacker covering the crossing routes in the middle of the field. So I'm very nervous about Zach Ertz's production again this week. He's kind of been, well, not kind of, he's been very underwhelming so far this season. And I think you guys, if you have a better streaming tight end option, I just saw Jimmy Graham go up and make a spectacular one-handed catch. Like, these are guys that I would have been starting over Zach Ertz this week. Mo Alie-Cox is a guy I'd start over Zach Ertz this week. Lots of matchups across the board are better than the Philadelphia Eagles against Pittsburgh. Next up, I think you guys should be sitting Terry McLaurin this week. The case on him is fairly simple. He's switching quarterbacks, going from Dwayne Haskins, who has that college chemistry with him, to Kyle Allen. A quarterback flip is just a tough situation to overcome, especially on a 1 week's notice. He's going to be facing shadow coverage from Jalen Ramsey, most likely. Jalen Ramsey is physical. He's going to get in McLaurin's face. And he's going to do a fairly good job of locking McLaurin up. So I don't think that McLaurin is going to see as high a volume as he's used to with Dwayne Haskins. And I also think that the shadow coverage is going to impact his role. Another guy here, kind of a workhorse running back, but not in a great offense, so his numbers aren't fantastic. But all the reason you should still be sitting him this week because of a brutal matchup. And that's Myles Gaskin of the Miami Dolphins. Miles Sanders on a far better team. as weird as that is to say about the Eagles right now, because they've looked pretty poor, along with the fact that the line of the Eagles is probably better than the Dolphins. San Fran did a really good job of shutting Miles Sanders down. Miles Sanders' biggest production came in the passing game. He only had 43 yards rushing, I believe, against the 49ers in that game. So you guys should be sitting Myles Gaskin this week. Find a different option at flex. If he's your RB2, I'm really sorry for you. You guys hopefully can find a stream option on the waiver wire, but keep Myles Gaskin out of your lineup at all costs this week. A lot of these players on my sit list are touchdown dependent. Obviously, they can put up viable numbers because of their talent and their volume per se, but they really need that touchdown this week because of difficult matchups. My next guy on the sit list is probably a guy who just came off of his career game, at least in terms of his new home in Cleveland, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. The Colts defense does a fantastic job of limiting big plays allowed to the opponent. Odell Beckham's not going to get those downfield plays. They're going to prevent it. That Tampa 2 defense plays very conservative. They let up the underneath stuff, but they will not let Odell down the field. I think that you're going to be very disappointed with Odell's production this week. I put him in my sell high video. If you could have got Odell off your hands for a much more advantageous player, an RB or another wide receiver with better matchups in the rest of the season schedule, I would have done so. Hopefully you guys got that off your hands, and maybe even before Sunday, if you can hammer out a trade before then, I would do so as well, because Odell's going to be disappointing this week, and you're going to be shaking your head again. My last note on the sits list before I get into my starts is I want you guys to be extremely successful in your leagues. I want you guys to win your matchups. I want you guys to be the best fantasy players you can be. And in doing so, I think that sometimes you have to take the cautious route over the upside route. Be very cautious this week when you're starting the Titans and Bills players. Their game just got pushed back to Tuesday evening. I think that if the Titans cases keep coming in, which they have been coming in, there's a day when we thought it was all done. The cases were over. They hadn't received any more positive tests. And then they started coming, and we've had 2 or 3 days in a row now where Titans have been testing 1 or 2 positive cases per day. If they keep testing positive, the Titans game against the Bills will be postponed. It will be canceled, and they will not play again this week. It would be a terrible way to lose your fantasy game this week if you were to start a Titan or Bill player and they ended up didn't playing. It would really screw your team over, and you'd probably lose your week. Obviously, I know some guys like Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Jonnu Smith even are probably must-starts penciled into your lineups, and you really don't want to risk going without them if they do play. And I understand that, but guys, stay away from guys like John Brown, Cole Beasley, Corey Davis. You can find replacements for these players on the waiver wire or on your bench. I know that these guys might be better than the people that you were going to start or are starting, I guess, but you should weigh your risk and reward when you do so. Know your team's record, know the risk that you can take, what you can afford to give up, and just know your situation. If you guys have any questions about this, feel free to comment down below. I'll be happy to provide some insight into your team and offer my 2 cents on what I think you guys should be doing. Let's get into the fun stuff here. My first must-start of the week is DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers, who is traveling to Atlanta to play the Falcons. I think that Atlanta is a very talented football team, but their secondary is just decimated by injuries. They're not competent back there anymore. They can't cover anybody. DJ Moore is an exceptionally talented football player. He's a very good wide receiver, and I think he's going to have maybe a peak game of his season so far this week. I think that he gets in the end zone for the first time of the season this week as well, and I think that he's going to provide a massive return for fantasy owners. Hand in hand with DJ Moore comes Robbie Anderson, who Teddy Bridgewater has also shown a nice connection with this season so far. I think that Anderson could be in for a couple big plays as well. Start your Panthers versus the Falcons, and you will not regret it in fantasy football this week. And on to my next player on my must-start list, we've got Justin Jefferson and Vikings pass catchers in general against the Seattle Seahawks. If you guys have watched any Seahawks games, they just get thrown all over. The Seahawks secondary, they just sit back and play cover 3, and you can throw all over these guys. Justin Jefferson has been an electric rookie. Adam Thielen is a solid must-start player this week. He's pretty much a perennial start player every week, but especially this really juicy matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. You want to be playing those 2 receivers in your lineups for fantasy this week. You guys will not be disappointed with the results. My next favorable matchup of the week is the Giants offensive players against the Dallas Cowboys. I think that in particular my favorite guys on this list are Daniel Jones and Darius Slayton. I think that the Dallas Cowboys defense is just going to let Darius Slayton breeze into the end zone for probably a 50 or 60-yard touchdown, 40 yards maybe. I think that Darius Slayton obviously is that deep threat. Him and Daniel Jones have a very nice connection together, and the pressure hasn't been getting there besides Aldon Smith. I think that Daniel Jones is going to have his best fantasy outing of the season so far. He's going to sit back, he's going to be comfortable, and he's going to be able to sling the rock all over the field. Like I said, look out for big plays from Slayton, and maybe even Golden Tate get some nice rolls sprinkled in there as well. Heck, even Devontae Freeman might have a nice game as well, who I'm not very high on. But I think in general, the Giants will have their best fantasy outings of the season against their matchups against the Cowboys and the Eagles. So make sure to stay tuned for those. All right, last couple of guys here on the must-start list. You've got to start Eric Ebron against the Philadelphia Eagles. Eric Ebron is a very talented tight end. Him and Ben Roethlisberger kind of ignited that connection the last game the Steelers played in Week 3. But, of course, the bye week kind of might have thrown a wrench in that for future production going forward. But I think the Eagles are a very favorable matchup for Ebron this week. Obviously, they just allowed 15 catches for, 183 and a touchdown to George Kittle. Obviously, Ebron is not as talented as George Kittle, I would say. But Eric Ebron is a very good receiving tight end in his own right. I think that Ebron has really nice touchdown potential in this game, as well as catching maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 balls for between 60 and 80 yards, and being a really nice option at tight end this week who can provide very solid and safe numbers for your lineup. Eric Ebron is 100% a player I would start over Zach Ertz this week. If you've got Ebron and Ertz as a pairing on your team, make sure to send Ertz to your bench and promote Ebron to the starting lineup. I think that is the matchup that's really going to give you the best upside this week. And then my last guy is kind of a sneaky start player this week. Is actually Laviska Shenault for the Jags, who is playing the Texans. Now, a lot of analysts are saying, and rightfully so, that DJ Chark might be a guy that on paper you would say has a really nice matchup against Houston, but actually Ronald Darby has been very solid in man-to-man coverage this year, and he actually might shadow Chark this week. So DJ Chark might get hampered down a little bit, but that leaves the rest of the field completely open for Laviska Shenault. And I really like Shenault. The Jags have used him as a swift army knife. He looks really versatile. He's done a lot of nice things for their offense so far, and I could see him having a nice big game against the Texans. He might break 100 yards, maybe even a score or two, and he gets some rushing attempts sprinkled in there as well. So Laviska Shenault is a guy who I would give flex consideration this week, especially he's a guy I'd honestly penciled in at your flex. If you wanted to bump your flex RB up into RB2 to replace Miles Sanders and then put Laviska Shenault in your flex, I would be totally okay with that. So make sure you guys let me know in the comment section down below if you have any questions regarding your fantasy lineups, any situations you want me to go over for before the Sunday. So I will get to all of those. I can promise you that. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out fantasy football content like this 3 to 4 times a week, along with some other Madden NFL game prediction videos sprinkled in there as well. So looking at 4 to 5 videos a week, trying to grow the channel here, trying to build a nice fantasy football community, and hopefully you guys will be a part of the journey with me. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. It means the world to me, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.